Okay, no, we are recording, so thank you all for coming. This is the third event related to DA that we organized here in Italy to speak about the DA, the evolution of DA, the value of DA, and the value of adopting this toolkit inside the company to help the company to achieve the business agility and to support people inside the company to go ahead with their journey and their improvement about Agile, Lean, DevOps, but all related to business agility. So Al is the creator, the authors of Flex, and he's joined DA in the since 2-3 years, I don't know really. I meet Al during our journey about the AVSG and also during the alpha, and I asked him if we can join us here in Italy to explain the value of the value stream Flex also inside DA and explain us what will be the supporting rule that we can have in helping people and team to improve themselves. So I will give you all the stage, Al, and please go ahead. Thank you so much.
Okay, well, thank you, and thank you for being here.
You shut down the mic.
Sorry.
Al, you shut down the mic.
Okay, how about now? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, good.
Okay, great. So I'm with the PMI now. I've been around the block, so to speak, as they say in the US. Been with Lean Kanban University, Lean Systems Society. I was a contributor to SAFe. I don't do anything now with it. I think Flex is a better program at scale, although Flex also has a playbook, as we call it, or we're looking at building one for SAFe. It actually has one as a short addendum. So if you're doing SAFe and you want to see how to improve it with some of these concepts, I'll actually be showing you a couple things today, but we have a seminar on that as well. Sorry, let me shut my phone off. This is a culmination of the work that was done at Net Objectives from about 2005 when we started getting into Agile at Scale. Back then, Agile at Scale was 3 teams. We've come a long way now. But we could not get Scrum of Scrums to work, basically, even with a few teams. It sounds great and it sounded good, but back then we started using Lean, and we came up with some concepts that were quite productive. Guy Beaver, one of our consultants there, myself and Jim Trott, another consultant, wrote that book, Lean Agile Software Development, Achieving Enterprise Agility. I think it was around 2009 or 8, but that was the forerunner of what I'm doing here. I would not buy that book. It's old. Most of that stuff's available, and we've gone way beyond it. But my point is, although DAVSC, the Disciplined Agile Value Stream Consultant Workshop, is new, it builds on basically 16 or 15 years of work at Net Objectives, and then the last year and a half work at the PMI, and I'm pretty excited about it. I think it's kind of a revolutionary approach, and it has a solid track record of what we did at Net Objectives. So one thing, I want to talk a minute about the disciplined agile philosophy. We don't believe really even in frameworks. DA is not a framework, it's a toolkit. And most frameworks are built on predetermined practices, which may or may not fit you. Therefore, you cannot take a one-size-fits-all. That's why we have this set of practices and options as they work, and then we show you how it can work better for you. Now, a lot of people think, well, this makes it more complicated because there are more options. But the reality, and I'm not going to talk about this much today, but I just want to mention it, you can have default starting points. So it's like, I liken it to a 27-speed bike. You have a derailleur, that's what changes gears of 3 different speeds in the front and 9 speeds in the back. And you can say, oh my goodness, I got 2 brakes, I got 2 derailleurs. This is so complicated. But you can also set it in a default way for where you normally ride your bike, in a higher gear, lower gear, mid gear, something like that. So disciplined Agile has a lot of options, but it doesn't have to be complicated. We give you more options in the toolkit as we go. And I just put that in because I think that's something that's been misunderstood. Now, FLEX stands for Flow for Enterprise Transformation, okay? Disciplined Agile can actually work with other frameworks because it's agnostic. It's actually based on the theories of flow, lean, also theory of constraints, organizational development, human behavior, that because of this, it can be adjusted to your needs. And if you're using an existing system, you can just improve things with it. In fact, this workshop, even though I'm calling it the Value Stream Consultant Workshop, because that's a particular role we have in the Disciplined Agile system, is just as much just a regular value stream management workshop. It's just we've taken basically a value stream management workshop and integrated into the Disciplined Agile family and toolkit. So it's about making the right decisions at the right time with the right people. You use Flex to improve frameworks, as I've mentioned. The philosophy is, how do I decide and look at my problems to do better? Okay, and I've actually already said that. This, in a nutshell, is what this workshop is about. So for years, Net Objectives looked at what does it take for people to improve organizations' ability to deliver value. And it's funny, even in my own company, a lot of people said this was kind of a fool's errand. They said, everything is so different. Every organization is so different. There's no way you can actually codify this. There's no way you can set up a guide, a process to do this. But fortunately, I had a lot of really brilliant people at Net Objectives, and I just watched them. And I'm not so bad myself. I did my own work as well. So there were about 4 or 5 really cutting edge people at Net Objectives. And over the years, I watched what they did. And over the years, I looked at what happened. And over the years, I looked to see, when did you do something in this situation? And when did you do something else in that situation? And looked at the laws of lean, because I've been doing lean for a very long time. I mean, basically, I was introduced to it in the mid 80s. Didn't use it in software until the around 2005, but I'd had a deep background in it and systems thinking. So I analyzed, these are what you need to use, but I don't want to have a system that takes somebody who's got 10, 15 years experience to use it. So I came up with, how do I create a system that creates a guidance, you could say, for a competent consultant. Okay, so this isn't something somebody could just take out of the box and use it who's not been doing consulting. But if you have some experience in Agile and you got some experience in consulting, this is a system that will support you. Okay, this, by the way, is why we require the DA Senior Scrum Master course as a workshop, because we want to make sure people have that background to do it. So then there's this, what do they need to do? What's the system to support you? And the workshop itself is how to teach the system to the people. This is basically what it is. A fancy way of saying this is, what's the job task analysis required for the job? What is the tool set, the way of thinking required, or that'll help you do that? And then the workshop to teach that to you. And that's what I'm so proud of with this course, because it is basically a guide to people to make decisions, and it can have preset practices if you want to. Okay, so starting out, let's look at this issue right here of what I call the inherent problem. We have this common organizational structure of kind of a top-down hierarchy. So this tends to put us into silos. It tends to have us manage top-down. It's just the nature of the beast. It's like, are our people properly utilized? Are they being productive? What's the quality of their work? Are they working on the right things? That's just kind of a natural result of this type of structure. But our work doesn't go that way. Our work kind of goes, something comes in, does it get approved? And it cuts across the organization until it finally comes back to the customer. So what we have is we have this because it's cutting across, and because there are many of these things cutting across, these are the value stream basically, they often get in conflict with each other about what they should do. And this is really the problem, is that we manage our people in this direction and our workflows in this direction. And people know this, but typically no one's really managing the value as a whole. Everybody is managing the people that report to them, okay? So this is a serious problem, and it's something we have to fix. And if we look at the flow of work, that's what's called the value stream. There are people in the value stream, but the people aren't the value stream. Those are the people working in the value stream. So that's important. SAFe kind of slightly redefined it, and it actually makes things a little harder to understand. We want to look at the workflow, not that the people aren't important, but by looking at the workflow, we can see more things. By considering the workflows, the value stream, then when they overlap with people, it gives us an insight on what to do. So by definition, it's the set of actions that take place to add value from the initial request to realization of value by the customer. Okay, this is important. It's not when you release it. It's when the customer gets value to it. Now, some organizations have internal value streams, of course. You might be doing something for HR, somebody like that. The value stream always begins and ends with the customer. The customer can be internal, as I mentioned. Now, when we say begins and ends with a customer, it could be the beginning of the customer, could be somebody speaking on behalf of the customer, but it's still that, it's for the basis, the benefit of the customer. Okay. It's the work. People are in the work. We want to make that distinction. So here's a question. How often does the work wait? And it's an important question, because remember, we're managing people top down, and managers are often looking to see how busy people are and what they're working on. But who's looking at the work itself? See, what happens with the work, it comes in, and then you have to wait for somebody else. And then it comes in, you do a little bit of work, you have to wait for somebody else. It comes in, you do a little bit. And there's this question of how much is the work actually waiting? And in most organizations, we're not noticing this. You know, to ask the question, what percentage of the time is work moving forward? In the waterfall days, when there were a lot of things going on, work was moving forward only 5–10% of the time. That might sound astounding, but let me suggest something here to get an idea of this. And in fact, this still happens a lot. But I remember when I would go around talking to people just a few years ago, I would say, how many projects are you on? And people would say, oh, 3, 4, 5. Now think about it. If you're on 5 different projects, 5 different value streams, then that means the work you're on is waiting 80% of the time, because you're only working on 20% of the projects. So this idea of attending to the focus, you could say, of the people working is very important. And it's waiting for something else to happen. So like if I'm working, I'm busy doing something, I'm working on my project, and then somebody interrupts me, then my project stopped working. I'm working, but the work on my original project is stopped. And then I get back to it maybe a couple hours later, and then I need somebody. So I go interrupt them. And now I have to wait a day or 2 for them to come back. The work is always waiting. This is really the problem. And most people don't know, because no one manages this typically. So if you think about it, if we're trying to get from start to end quickly, we need to be looking at the value stream. We should be managing the workflow, not the people. This is important. We also need to look what's coming upstream so I don't get surprised. How many times have you gotten surprised at something where you're working and then somebody says, oh, I've got this thing for you to do, and you didn't know about it? Well, that just now stops what you're doing. By the way, you do this to others if you're not paying attention to this. So this is our problem right here, is most organizations, if you're set up in an organizational structure with a hierarchy, everybody's talking about, oh, we need autonomous teams, we need all this. That's correct. But you need a structure where you can actually have the people working in one value stream or all together working on just that value stream, or as close as you can get to it. And the hierarchy that we're fighting to, so we can have more self-governing teams and things like that, is actually the same hierarchy that's working against us in providing value. We want this ecosystem, Okay, this is what's important. This represents a major shift. We're saying instead of attending to our people, now I'm going to say this and then I'm going to kind of correct what might have been misheard in this. I'm going to say instead of paying attention to our people, we're going to attend to delays in workflow and interactions. We're not trying to go faster. We're trying to remove delays. This is a big shift. So we're saying two things here. We're not focusing on the people. We're looking at the work. We're not looking, though, at how fast the work is being done. We're looking at to remove the delays. We also have to make things visible, because if you can't see it, you can't manage it. And why do I say focus on the workflow, not the people? Well, there are two reasons for this. First of all, we should trust our people. I don't have to manage our people. They should be able to manage themselves in an effective way. If we focus on the workflow, then what we're saying is, how do we create a structure so the people can get their work? The people we trust can get their work in. They can't often change the structure. Management can. So the role of management now starts becoming a little clearer. In managing the value stream, there are certain things they have to attend to. The objective is to get highest business value in a shorter amount of time, consistently, sustainably, and with high quality. It's to get increasing business agility. We have to look at the entire value stream. We're not trying to go fast in one place and then get blocked in another. We're not even interested in speed at any one place. We're wanting to go from this place to that place. And this enables us to work more as a team. And this is also very, very important. And by working in small pieces, it makes things easier. Plus, a small thing is easier to get through the value stream. So we want to see that now we need visibility, we need smaller pieces, we need people to work together, we need to remove delays. This is the key. And notice that doing this lowers risk. So we want to create an environment that lowers risk. Now, I underscore the lower risk, because if you're a consultant, a lot of times consultants get very excited about Agile. I do too. I mean, it's just natural. But a lot of times business owners, business people, business stakeholders, they don't care. They just want the job done. They want to know how they can get the job done, what they can do to help it. And they care about risk. So I suggest you talk to business stakeholders about faster delivery, lowering risk, higher value, not Agile per se. Agile is a means to that end. Okay. Now, there's one other thing that's needed, is this holistic approach, the full value stream, but also the value streams and how they interact with each other. Okay, so this is what's called systems thinking. How do I view everything that's there? How do things interact? And a way to think about systems thinking is a little bit of like, what part of an airplane is responsible for flight? Well, is it the wings? Well, yeah, but if you don't have engines, it doesn't work. If you have really, really big wings and not good engines, you won't get off the ground. If you just add more engine than you need for the wings, you're going to make the plane too heavy. It's not going to be fuel efficient. See, there are all these interactions. Systems are not the pieces. Systems are not even the pieces of how they all kind of fit together physically. They're how they all interact with each other. So we need to look at our value stream from an interactive point as a whole. Improving one part could actually make the plane worse. You get a nice balanced plane, you had too strong an engine, it gets worse. So this is important. Local optimizations don't always deliver what you want. Now, let's take a holistic view at first. Excuse me, and then I'll tell you what I'm going to tell you a little bit in this workshop. The simplistic view, simplistic strong word, a simple view. It's actually accurate. It's not simplistic, but it's a little oversimplified. In getting customer value, in managing your value stream, the essence, in a sense, of value stream management is we want high value items being worked on. We want to have an effective workflow. But to do that, we have to have what's called an effective value creation structure. This means how the people are organized, how they're in teams or not in teams, whatever works. How are people organized to work together? The term value creation structure is not a term we made up, but it's not that well known. I think it was Niels Fleiling made it up in Organized for Complexity. At least that's where I first heard it. So customer value is achieved by having a good value stream, good things going into it, an effective workflow in it, and an effective value creation structure that enables that effective workflow. Underneath it all, there's this philosophy of systems thinking, looking at the whole. And lean management has to help coordinate the structure. They're not managing people. Remember, our focus is on the work, the structure, and what goes into it. It's not on the people because we trust the people. Okay. What I wanted to do today, though, besides just giving you value stream management, I'm going to give you three things. One is, I've actually kind of alluded to this. One of the guiding principles of effective workflow is to remove delays. Again, you're not trying to go faster. If you think about it, a lot of the things you've heard underscore this, like automated testing removes the delay of having to manually test and waiting for feedback. Managing queues, Don Reinertson in his brilliant book, Product Development Flow, second generation lean product development, talks about managing your queues, because when queues are like the waiting time between things. So if you manage that, you have less delay. So anytime you can see you can remove delays in the value stream, that's a good thing. I'm not going to talk about that much more now than I already have, because that was illustrated in the inherent problem. I am going to talk about this thing called minimum business increments. This is something you could start literally using today. This is probably the most important concept I've seen in lean and agile and flow in my career in Agile of 22 years. I've been doing software for 51 years now, but I've been doing Agile to some level since 99. And this is the most important concept. I've seen individuals inside a company take this one concept of a minimum business increment, I'll go into it more, and literally change the organization for the better. So I'm going to spend a little time on this because I want to leave you something tangible to use, not just an abstract idea of value stream. Now, I'm also going to give you an example of the effective value stream. There are many things here, but there's a common pattern, play, insight, you could call it what you will, about how you can make the value creation structure. This is a very trivial one. It's very simple, but it breaks the what we always know about teams. And it's like we have to get out of this structure of always thinking about how to, we have to get out of the structure of taking a practice and then holding it as a must do, okay, about how we have stable teams and things like that. We'll see there are changes to the rules. Okay, so I'm going to start with an interesting thing I guess I discovered about 3 or 4 years ago. So this is something we do in the workshop. We have a Miro board, a virtual board that we actually play this exercise, collaborate to discover things. But a few years ago, when I went into a client, what I started doing is I started talking to the executives, managers, team leads. I'd get them all in a really big room and I'd say, look, let's look at this issue of how we're building with customers. There's a business side, typically, there's an implementation and support side. Now, they really shouldn't be split, but most companies bringing in a consultant, they are. So I kind of start where they are. And I say, look, it goes from the customer into the business, then to implementation and support. There's some handoff. This is actually where the minimum business increments are. What we're going to do is take these small pieces, which I'll describe in more detail in a few minutes, these small chunks of work, the things we can build that are smallest, and it's a way of communicating. And then I walk through the idea. Well, on the business side, we start with portfolio management. We have some goals and metrics. We have strategies, initiatives, business backlog. And I actually start writing this on the board like this. And I say, then we go into, there's a discovery workflow. We have an intake queue. And I'm drawing out, in a sense, the value stream as it goes. And I'm making some comments. And I just kind of work through this whole thing where I also try to make it clear we're not handing things off. We're just, there's this flow of work. And of course, it's not clean like this. The term value stream is a little bit, or maybe a major misnomer. It's better to be called a value network, because you know how it is. The work goes all over the place. It's kind of crazy. The value stream got its name when it was used in manufacturing, where it was more linear. But in our world, it's not linear. Okay. And that's why I call it value networks here. It's better if they're self-organizing, mostly autonomous teams, and then it comes through this whole thing. Okay, and of course, you need to have agreements, there's feedback, and there's all of this. What we actually do, and I'm not going to do it here, but I'm just alluding this, is one way you can talk to executives and team leads is you lay this out as what we call the idealized value stream. And in the workshop, we do this virtually with a mural board where we lay this out, and then people start evaluating where they're having troubles. We overlay what we call insights, things you should do on top, and things you should do on top, and they get a sense of seeing what they've done that's working and what they haven't done and they should be doing. So this is a nice visual way of working with people. Okay, so let me step back, because minimum business increments is an important concept, as I said. If there's one thing I would teach a company, if somebody said, Al, you got one thing to teach, well, I think I would explain the philosophy I just did, but one practice, let me say that, not a philosophy, not stuff like that, but a practice, it would be the minimum business increment. So most people have heard of the minimum viable product, okay, the MVP. The MVP now has 3 different definitions depending on who you talk to. Frank Robinson, not the baseball player, but in the, I don't know if it was 99, 2001, about then he created the idea of the minimum viable product as basically what I'm going to be talking about as the minimum business increment. But then Eric Ries redefined it as when I'm building a new product. I'm not mad at Eric for doing this. It was kind of a better term for what he did than what Frank did. And it's the smallest piece of work used to validate an hypothesis. In other words, is it viable? Can I see what's going on? And MVPs, all Eric Ries, are geared towards startups, and they're the first time a product service is released. And it's usually built by a small team that can pivot. Even in a large organization, if you say, hey, we're building this new product, they often do it as a kind of phantom works. They work by themselves. They get it all done. They're more or less self-contained. The problem is this. What do you do when it's not a startup? What do you do when it's not a new product? You're an established company. It's an enhancement to an existing product. Multiple teams are required to build it. They're not aligned. I mean, this is not what an MVP was designed for. Yet this is what, not trying to pick on SAFe, but because they've redefined the MVP to be this small chunk of work you give to the team, and they're ignoring whether it's new, or they're ignoring whether it's an existing piece for an existing, I mean, a new piece for an existing system with a lot of teams involved and lots of people involved. That's not good. This is too broad. So the MBI is a different concept from the MVP, but both based on the philosophy of doing small things. It doesn't replace the MVP. It's just use the MVP when you've got a new product, when you've got a small team or group of teams working on it. The MBI is the smallest increment that you can create, realized by an internal, external customer. And it's basically our equivalent of epics. There are no epics in the discipline Agile Value Stream Consultant. Epics are kind of too big. They're almost like an initiative more than something big, okay? We want to look at what we can build. It's also not about doing less. In other words, I could have a 6-month initiative I want, and I will break that down into, oh, I can deliver this value in a month, and I can deliver some more in a couple of weeks, and then I could do some more a few weeks after that. Is how do you deliver faster, not wait for the whole thing. So when you introduce MBIs and people say, oh, you're giving me less than I want, I say, no, we're going to give it all to you. It's a 6-month project. We'll give you some soon, then some after that. And you talk about, how do I get value sooner? Business people like that. So there's stakeholders on the discovery side. Basically, you decompose your strategies, your initiatives into the MBIs. Okay, value's got to be defined by the customer, but within the context of the business. Okay, you got to look at your audience. This is one way of creating MBIs. Is you say, well, we're going to build this thing, but you know what? We have 4 personas. We're going to build this for this type of persona first, because we can get that out faster. You all do this somewhat with geographies and languages and things like that. The MBI takes it to another level. What is the minimum thing? What is the smallest target audience that I could get realized value for that makes sense for the business? And that's what you focus on. You decide on the scenarios. You determine the minimum increment for those scenarios in question. And you will be creating several MBIs maybe for these scenarios, but you put them out one at a time. To me, one of the powers of the MBI is it can be a container. To build this function, I need these people. And this is pretty powerful, because when I go into planning, then I know this is the smallest thing I could release quickly. I know who needs to build it. and I can plan around this much better. Okay. And often a series of MBI is required, because what I'm going to do, I'm going to start, I'm going to release something, but that's just a start. And well, what's the next value? Or maybe what's the next customer? What's the next persona? So we have business agility by getting something out in the field quickly, which could be an enhancement. Remember, in this case, if it's a new product, that'd be an MVP. This is a enhancement to a bigger system. Okay. This is very important because this gives what's called the plumb line. Actually, let me put this picture back before you see it. See that plumb line, that line down there, everything aligns to that. That's just a carpentry term. So if you're saying this is what we're building, this is the minimum business increment we can build, all the teams can align around that, say that's what we're going to get out next, because that's the most important one. And all of that is important. We use it as a group, because when you have two big items, part of one might be more important than part of another, but that other one might have part that's more important than that. So we want to break them down into these small pieces going through. We want to align our teams around it. Okay, I'm going to pause. Okay, so that's the MBI. That I spent a bit of time on that because basically that's a very important concept. Now I'm going to talk about the borrowed team member. This is just an example of how what looks like breaking up teams isn't breaking up teams, but is removing delays. Okay, so look on the left. This is a scenario I've seen a lot. You have a team, like up here in the upper left, you have a team that needs one of these people down here. Like this is a component team, and this is a team here that's using it. And what often happens is you might have one person here that's always working with these people. I mean, they spend all their time supporting them, but you have different planning sessions. Each team does their own sprint planning or iteration planning or whatever you're doing. And then this team gives the requirements to this team, and then this person works on it. Okay. Now, the problem with that is that they don't integrate on a continuous basis. They're always handing things off with the requirements documents. They might even be in different time zones or different locations. So you're injecting a delay here. Anytime this team discovers something new or hands something off or gets feedback, it's slowed down because this person is not literally on that team. Now, I want to be clear. This is when this is the situation over a certain amount of time. Like maybe for the next 2 months, this team is going to be needing something built by this component team. Okay. You're not always jiggling people around, but in this situation, which happens often enough, imagine if this person joins this team. Now the component gets to be worked on directly within the team, what the needs are. Now this causes another problem though. So let's be clear about this. Remember, we're optimizing the whole. We're not just optimizing this team here. The problem, of course, is this team building and changing the component for, I mean, is this person changing the component for this team, but ignoring the problems they may be causing with the component? You can see that risk that we've just added with this. So that's why this person has to be in the daily stand-ups here and has to be in the daily stand-ups here. Now, I've seen this work a lot. In fact, I don't even think I created this. One of my clients created this about 2007, I think it was. This was before I knew Kanban. Although I think I like this solution better than having used Kanban. I was tag teaming with one of our other consultants, and every week I'd go down, and then every other week he'd come down, and we were like going back and forth that way. And there was a time that, oddly enough, the other guy's consultant in this case was also Alan, and he had gone down, and then it was, I think I missed a week, and I came a week after that, and the company guy who was leading it, he wasn't the CIO, but he was in charge of this. He said, "Hey, Al, we had this problem, and the problem was we were building a component, we were building this software, and we were needing a massive change in a component, and we were always waiting for the component. We weren't working with them directly. We'd give them the requirements. They'd come back. It wasn't quite what we wanted. And it just seemed that this whole Agile thing, and we were doing Scrum, this whole Agile thing and Scrum and cross-functional teams, it just seemed to us that we should have this team member be on the main team that was needing the component." And I said, "Yeah, that makes a lot of sense." And he said, but it also seemed that we needed to have them be at the daily stand-up of the team they were working on and the daily stand-up of the component team so they wouldn't cause problems. And I said that also made sense. So this is a natural result of just looking at lean. What's interesting, however, is the person here didn't like doing 2 daily stand-ups. They said, well, you're wasting my time. And the answer is not really, but yes, you now have a 15-minute meeting here and a 15-minute meeting here. This is an example of optimizing the whole. Some people get slowed down, but this works quite well. So this is what's called the borrowed team member lets you go faster. That's really the idea. Okay, so now I'm going to get into the meat of what we spend in the workshop. It's 3 days. We spend 2.5 days building all these tools, mindset, practices, and then at the end we have about a 3-hour session where we get things done. And it's what we call an engagement planning. We do an assessment, we look at the symptoms, we have insights, we choose our way of working, and we have an improvement backlog. Now I'm looking at the timing. There will be time for questions, but I'm probably going to go to 10 before the hour to get to them, just to let you know. So I'm going to go a little bit past 9:45 or the time where you are, but we will have some time for questions. So the current state and the scope of potential change is we have to look at where we are, but we also have to look at what we can change. If I've got a CIO telling me what I can do, that's one thing. If I've got the CFO telling me, that's another thing. If I've got the CEO, that's yet another thing. So we have to recognize that the level of sponsorship we have is going to affect what we can do in an organization. You know, we don't assume also that teams always come first. It seems that's how everybody works. Oh, get good agile teams and then get them to work together. That's not always the right approach. In fact, I would say that's not right most of the time, even though that's how most scaled agile approaches work, especially SAFe works that way. You know, get essential SAFe, get all the teams, then build it up. I have found that if you look at the entire whole and how the structure of portfolio and product management's done, teams naturally work better in that context. So we don't want to assume a bottom-up approach is the proper way. By the way, I'm not saying a top-down approach. I'm saying create the context, okay? So what we have is there are what we call insights. There are about 36 insights, you know, like use MBIs, attend to the value stream, have cross-functional teams. So we have a board where we look at what these are. We consider the different orders and combinations of what they can be. And we can ask, can we make things simpler and fit for purpose? So we want to create this improvement backlog. And the question is, how do we do this? So we start with, this was something I saw with all these years at Net Objectives. I saw a pattern. I saw that most organizations, unless they had special constraints due to regulation, government, or due to hardware and software, most organizations pretty much needed to do the same thing conceptually, but implement it in a different way. All needed portfolio management, all needed product management, all needed some sort of discovery. And that when you went to organizations that had either regulatory constraints or had hardware and software issues, you can add that to the bigger picture. So we start with these primary insights. We see which ones are causing the problems. We delay doing things that aren't in scope or people aren't ready for them, okay? We're basically saying also don't do things that are gonna overwhelm people. So in other words, we have this, we used to call it a playbook. In fact, I guess we still call it a playbook. All these options, and then look, okay, what are you ready for? What are we able to do? Due to who's driving this, and don't do too much because we don't want to overwhelm people. So how do we do this? We also have to look at the pace for implementation. So this is where we do a lot of these virtual boards. And what we want to do in the same way, attend to how much we can deliver, we want to consider that we might have what's called a minimum viable change. I think Jason Little in Lean Change Management came up with this concept. He now actually calls them experiments, but it's the idea I've got this change, like I want to do MBIs, but maybe I can implement that change in smaller increments, okay? For example, use a definition already, might just be that you have one, start by agreeing, we'll have a problem statement, you then might add a requirement. You know, you could tailor an MBI template for you, so you don't have to just jump to it, you could do it in little bits. So here's an example of the Miro board, where we do an assessment. You'll notice this is pretty much the same picture I showed before, except now we have insights. And what people do is they put a red dot. If they're doing it poorly, they put a triangle, a yellow triangle. If they got some issues with it, but they're doing it a little bit. So we can start seeing what some of the problems are. And we do this interactively. It comes up on the screen. People of all the people there put the dots on. It's not a dot voting. It's just you can put as many dots as you think there are problems. And this gives you an idea of where you're having problems in the value stream. These are things we should be doing. Do we have a decent discovery intake? Are we using MBIs and MVPs? So this is an interactive game. It takes usually about 30 minutes to get some sense of this. We also want to understand what the symptoms are. So we have these red things here. These are things we've identified as like, items are too big, unclear requirements. People can add their own, but these are the ones we've seen most people have. So now what we've done is we've done an assessment as to where people are doing things well or not so well. We have an assessment of what symptoms they're exhibiting. And this is kind of a start to this whole thing. So we do this interactively again with the managers, the executives, things like that. And we've now got our assessment, we've got our symptoms, and And now what we want to do is create, well, what do we do with this? So we all have a conversation. This takes a little longer. This can be 30 minutes to an hour, might take a little bit more coaching. But you'll notice some of these have now red borders and dashed yellow borders. And we missed some. Wait, we had more than this. Where did they go? Well, if it wasn't the problem, we take it off the board. We don't need to worry about this. It's off scope. It's not the immediate stuff to work with. What we're saying is these things that we've talked about that we're not doing well, these are our primary candidates for change. So we take this is all in this board. We're just going to different phases in the board. So in this case, it looks like we could use DevOps and a system demo and MBIs and MVPs. Discovery intake, we're doing that okay. Maybe we won't start with that. You get the sense where we've identified where to start. We're not saying we are saying that these are things you have to do, but we're not saying start with them all. We're saying start with those you need to do. And then we're also going to have it where you can choose your way of working. So you can choose what works for you. What happens here, and it's hard to see, and you can't read this, that's okay. What I have here is this band and this band and this band. These colors, by the way, they relate to that board. In fact, I'll back up. You see the blue going to the purple? See, each of these colors, except for the green, these greens are things you pretty much always have to do. So we made a special color for that. But this is at the left part of the value stream, and then it goes all the way to the right part of the value stream. So we start with, these are our candidates, and I'm going to zoom in just a little bit to make it clear. Okay, so there's only part of it zoomed in. What we're going to do is look at, are we ready to do this? Because it may be we're not ready to do this. It may be management isn't buying into it. People don't understand it. We have to do something else first. So what we do is we move things to the left. If they had the red borders, we leave them where they are if they're the triangles. And then we ask these questions. Are we ready? Is it in scope? In other words, is this something that the CIO might want, but we don't have agreement from the CFO to do it, so we can't do it. So what happens is we start with everything in this column. Those things that are the red borders, the things we know we need to do, those things that are in scope, those things we're ready, we put them here. And then those things that we took off the board, we put here. So notice we have this list of things. This is what we'd like to do to start. This is what we'll do after we get this done. This we're not worried about. We're doing okay with this. And we figure out how to do each one of these. Now there's another thing to attend to, and I don't show it here, but it happens. Sometimes you'll have where you're trying to make a lot of changes in one place. That's cognitive overload. That could be a problem. That's what this third one is. So you might move something you'd like to do. You're ready to do it. You have the scope to do it. The manager saying yes, but it's going to be too much. So at the end here, we have a list of things we want to do. And what we do with this is you could take this list of things we've now decided to do, and you could actually add it to a Kanban board or a Trello board or whatever you want to do. So this is the main process. We're teaching you all the rules, and then we let you apply it to your situation and make the decisions. Now, if you have a company that, well, we don't want to go through all this, we want to be just told what to do. Okay, that's fine. We can give you a default starting point of what to do. This gives you choice. You don't have to add the complexity. There's a bit complexity here of choosing and making it fit you, but it's nice that you can. See, existing frameworks just say do this, but that may not be your problem. It may not be the solution you have. Okay, one last thing here. Actually, two last things, and then I'll be ready, about a minute each. The pace of adoption is important. Or how fast you go is important. I'll let you just skim that. Going too fast can work against you. Going too slow can work against you. So we have a bit on how you decide that, okay? There are 3 different approaches that are kind of popular. Flex says, look at the value stream, base it on the value stream. Scrum says, start with Scrum, work together, follow Scrum, figure out how to work together. And SAFe says, start at the program level and move up. It's an all in all the way at the program level, then you add portfolio, etc. We believe in starting in the right place. Okay, so I'm ready for questions. These are some ways to get a hold of me. That's my email. I'm very active on LinkedIn. If you want to participate on my posts, please connect with me. I've started a policy about 2 weeks ago. To be candid, I got very tired of all these ad hominem insults and rudeness that's on LinkedIn. So now I only allow connections to talk to me. I love it when you disagree with me. So this isn't, I'm not trying to get a disagreement. I love disagreement. I just don't like to be called names. I don't like to be insulted. So since I've done this, I found that people are talking more because they know they won't get insulted by the few people who do. So please join me, connect with me, have great conversations, poke me if I'm wrong, talk about what I say, though, not me. That says the Disciplined Agile LinkedIn group. That's another place you can go. And if you want to learn more information on the DAVSC, that's it. Why don't you put questions in the chat? But I had a couple of questions I knew that we wanted to get answered, but I'm looking in the chat for new things as well. Or maybe they've been there and my thing just hasn't scrolled up. I just noticed the bar. No. Okay. So yeah, just please ask questions there, but let me answer a couple of things.
Can I give a question, please?
I'm sorry?
Can I give you a question?
Yeah, give me a question and then I'll go to these other ones. But yeah, go ahead, start it.
Thank you. This is Gianpaolo speaking. I've seen your chart about the flow, the value stream, and the last one about flex that maybe are related one with the others. The question is, you have used terms like portfolio, product, and development.
Yes.
Due to the acquisition of Disciplined Agile by Project Management Institute, why I cannot see words like programs and projects inside the value stream?
Okay. So let's look at programs and projects. So one of the things, to me, a program would be, and I just didn't have time for it, a program would be kind of the bigger picture that contains products that you're building and things like that. Now, one of the things I think the Agile community is making a big mistake on is this whole project to product, like projects don't exist anymore. And that's not accurate. That's in the software world for a long time, what should have been considered a stable product with enhancements, you did want to make the mind shift, not a one-off project, another one-off project, another one-off project. And that's where a lot of this project to product comes from. If you read things like, I love McPherson's work, but it's very software centric. We believe you could do the same thing. You should do the same thing for project work. Like if you're doing maintenance on a bridge, that's a project work. And you could do the same thing with that. I just didn't talk about it, but projects are important. The difference between a project and a product mindset or a service mindset, with projects, you have a well-defined start and a well-defined end. And those exist. And those are things we have to do. And I have been talking a little bit about IT, but the value stream management is independent of whether it's IT or not. Okay. So in the workshop, we talk about this a bit more, and we talk about a program is more defined up here based on this is something we're going to be doing. And like going from an initiative to product pieces we're building, then we have to look at the whole program. How do we do program management to make sure everything is happening there? Now, did I answer your question by saying it that way?
Yeah, it's good. And what about what do you think about, or maybe do you know something about some standardizations of terms in some sort of common dictionary inside PMI, including the Flex dictionary or the value stream dictionary?
Yeah. So Flex and Discipline Agile are using consistent terms. Okay. And I'm not sure we're 100% consistent with a lot of the PMI work, although we're trying to become more consistent with it. And the reason is there are two different kind of mindsets blending together. Discipline Agile and Flex have come from an IT kind of background, and all the work will work in non-IT situations, but just historically, that's where we came from, okay? The thought process works just as well in non-IT. I've used Flex in non-IT situations. So I will admit there's a little bit of disconnect there that we're improving as time goes on. It's just, there's a lot of material here. Now, we're not trying to be consistent with people like SAFe or Less or the others. And the reason for that is actually they are changing terms in the industry, and they're taking a term that meant one thing, changing it, using it to mean something else. And in the process, they typically degrade the value of it. So we're just saying, no, we're going to be, here's what the term meant, here's what it should be. And then I point out the difference because it gets confusing when people take, a SAFe workshop, and there are 3 or 4 terms they've changed, like minimum marketable feature. Yeah. Actually, originally was very much what an MBI is. That's where we got the idea. And we changed it to business increment instead of marketable feature, because companies would say, well, we're not marketing. Okay, well, business increment, and they would get that. MMF, as it's used in the lean UX of SAFe, is not what it was from the people who created it.
Thank you.
Yeah, very good. Good question. Let me just quickly throw one thing in about how DA via C fits in with a couple of Discipline Agile courses. One of them, they kind of relate. We have 3 kind of advanced courses. One is the Disciplined Agile Senior Scrum Master. This is basically, after you're a Scrum Master, how do you work with several teams and show how teams can work with different parts of the organization. It's more still of a technique and practices point of view. So there's a new workshop coming out, the Discipline Agile Coach, which I'm not sure exactly, I'm not working on it. I'm not sure exactly of the time of it, but it'll be available in another 2-3 months, I think. And that's really intended for coaching more at the team parts of the organizational level. The DAVSC doesn't have a lot of coaching material in it per se, but it's really meant for the consultant across the entire organization. And it could also be used for value stream managers who own certain parts of it. We're considering, and if you're interested in either of these, send me an email. We're considering modifying the Disciplined Agile Value Stream Consultant, which is integrated into Disciplined Agile, to just have a value stream management workshop, which is just standalone because it would be virtually the same. It just wouldn't be integrated in with the terms. Or a Disciplined Agile Flex playbook for SAFe. These concepts I used when I did my SAFe work, when I used to work with SAFe. I took a lot of this, laid it on top. It's not about getting away from SAFe to Disciplined Agile. It's how do I take a SAFe implementation that's somewhat stagnated, use these concepts to move it forward. It's still SAFe. It's just kind of a better SAFe with that. The DAVSC workshop, there are some offerings right now, but it's still in a little bit of a pilot mode. It's going to be on the PMI website and more official May 18th, I think it is. And the certifications will be available in June. If you've been in the pilots already, you'll be able to take a test at that point. So if you take the course before the certs are ready, you'll be able to take the test later. Okay. Any other questions? We don't have much time, but I got time for one more. By the way, I would love some feedback, positive. Actually, I love positive feedback. Of course, I'd really like some negative feedback. I mean, don't make it up. But if I was overwhelming you, or if I wasn't clear about something, or if there's another point you want to know, please send me an email. I take it as a gift. I like my work being challenged and what I do being challenged, because that's how I learn. when I said that thing about LinkedIn, what I mean is, don't say, oh, you big, fat, ugly ogre, you don't know anything, and then here's what's wrong with you. I won't appreciate that. But saying it would have been clearer if you had said this, I would appreciate that. That's the distance I meant. And that's how I like to interact with folks. Okay, I guess we're at time. If there are no other questions, then I'm going to just hand it back to y'all.
I don't see any more questions. I don't know if someone want to ask you something directly or through the chat.
I don't see anything there.
Yeah, if not, okay. Thank you so much, Al, to be with us.
I enjoyed it.
I hope to see you soon and to have more opportunity to speak with us, with you, and with all of us. Thank you so much, and have a great day.
Very
Thank
good.
you.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Thank
Thank you very much.
Bye.
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 Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay. Stop the session.